Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Just Another Father. We're here with Pastor Chad, but before we get to the interview, I wanted to take just a few moments at the beginning to remind you all the ways that you can get involved. First and foremost, please keep not just the YouTube channel, but the Parent Coaching Network in general in prayer, that God would bring those that need the coaching, whether it's for marriage or for parenting, to me and my wife, so that we can be the biggest blessing to as many families as possible. The second way is get involved through social media, Facebook, Instagram, and here on YouTube, liking, sharing, and commenting constantly through this interview specifically, if you can, and then in the future episodes, we'll look back on the comments in here, and any questions that were stirred up, I would love to interact with you on future episodes. Without further ado, here is the father interview this week. We are here with Pastor Chad Rodgers from Wellspring Church. Pastor Chad, thank you so much for taking the time.
Hey man, glad to be here.
So let's just dive right into it. You are a dad.
Yep.
All right, good.
4 times.
Yeah. And so ages of the kids?
Yeah, well, my oldest will be 22, and then there is a 21-year-old, and a 20-year-old, and a 13-year-old.
Okay.
And so it's Evan, Brian, Zion, Brody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm interested to dive into the overlap there between the kids as we go on into your story. But before we go into the story, just pulling back real quick, when it comes to a father, and whether it's your definition of a dad, you don't really need to quote the Webster's dictionary definition of a dad, although I know you have them memorized.
Yes.
But when it comes to, when you think of the word father, what's some of the first things that come to your mind?
Well, I try to look at my dad because I feel like he did a great job, but I feel like a father is someone that is loving, caring, encouraging, gives correction in love, obviously, supportive. These are all things that I've seen in my own dad, so I feel like that, that's what a dad should be like,
And looking back at the last, I guess you said one's 22, so the last 22 years of you being a dad, I'm sure you'd be able to say without a shadow of a doubt, you met those 100%, no fail.
No fail, none. Perfect.
And then you wake up and you're no longer dreaming.
Yes.
And the reality is that I'm just assuming you need the grace of God.
Mm-hmm.
So just speak into that just a little bit. Obviously, when we get into your story, people will understand why I'm asking that question. But the importance of fathers realizing that perfection, there's only one perfect father.
Right.
And we're not him.
Right.
But so the idea that dads really need to understand that, and the liberation kind of you felt as God's worked that out in your life over the last 22 years. So what's so I guess the question would be, what would you say to a dad that's really struggling with this idea that he doesn't ever seem to get things right? He's not, and he's striving to be that perfect dad. Yeah. And he's not.
Yeah, I just feel like you might as well just take that off the table. Being a perfect dad, you're gonna make mistakes.
Yeah.
I know I've made plenty, but you have to learn from those mistakes. And you'll hear about this more, but there's obviously a rough season that created in my fatherhood experience, I guess you could say, that created some emotions, some bad, a lot of bad, because of just things that happened. And so it took me some time to reevaluate myself and to see myself in a different light. But yeah, being a dad's hard. There's a lot of things against us. I think that we obviously do our best. We seek the Lord. We seek the Word. Mm-hmm. And we try to align ourselves with the Word of God. And I think if we do that successfully, I think we'll be a pretty good dad.
So something that I like to encourage dads with, just to get your thoughts on this concept. I like to say that the way in which dads can be perfect, or the definition of a perfect dad, is a dad that recognizes his shortcomings and strives to learn from them to be better.
Yes.
That we all, in that sense, can be good dads or can be great dads. Not perfect dads. We can be great dads if the definition that we hold as a great dad is one that knows they're going to make mistakes but isn't willing to stay in their mistakes.
Yeah.
So let's dive into just a little bit of your story.
All right. Well, it's hang on. It's kind of confusing. So I was married at a very young age. It was 1998, I believe. So I was fresh out of high school. I was just about to turn 20 years old, and the woman that I was marrying was 19. So we were, needless to say, I mean, probably not. Well, we weren't ready for it. We were not ready for marriage, but I had pastor friends and friends of my family, friends of my parents, trying to get me not to go through with it, but I felt like I knew everything. A 20-year-old obviously knows everything.
Yeah.
And so we went through with it, and, we felt like we were in love, and, we were into our marriage about 2 or 3 years, and things were quickly falling apart. I mean, it was just not a good situation. We were living in Morgantown, Pennsylvania at the time. That's where I'm from. I'm from Pennsylvania. And we decided to make our marriage better, we would move to Florida, because moving helps everything.
Yeah.
We have, at this time, we did have our 2 boys, Evan and Zion. Evan, I think when we moved to Florida, he was about 3 or 4, roughly around it, and then Zion was 2. And so we decided to take our happy little family to Daytona Beach, Florida. The excitement of moving was cool, and it helped for a short term, but quickly the old things came back, and things just didn't work out. And I guess I would say it was probably around 2001, 2002 where we separated. And during this time, we were not living, Christian, godly lives. She was not a Christian, so that was, I married into someone that didn't even believe in the faith that I believe in, Jesus Christ. And so obviously that's kind of a bad start.
Yeah.
And so things weren't going well. Like I said, we separated. I was a manager at a restaurant. She was working at a club, bartending, that kind of lifestyle. And just obviously when you're working in the world and you're living in the world, bad things happen. It's just never a good ending. And so we separated. I moved in with a friend of mine, and we did that for several months, and still arguing a lot. We never could agree on something, and without me knowing, she moved back to Pennsylvania and took our 2 kids with her back up to Morgantown, Pennsylvania, or Westchester, Pennsylvania area, and which was kind of the start of probably a root of bitterness in my heart.
Okay.
And so when that happened, I just kind of went wild in Daytona. I mean, I was not living already. I was pretty morally good.
Yeah.
But when that happened, I kind of really just turned my back on God and said, I'm just going to live my life. I don't care anymore. And I went right in with the world very quickly. And I would say I was probably around late 2002. And actually, during this time in our separation, she had filed for divorce. We were having a custody battle. And during this time, I actually met Erin, who is my wife now.
Yeah. And
I don't know how far you want me to go in with this.
So let me pause you right here.
Okay.
Let's rewind a little bit.
All right.
And go to what's going on emotionally and 2 stages of that story. First off, let's rewind all the way back.
All right.
Evan, firstborn.
Yes, Evan.
You find out you're pregnant, or you're not. She's pregnant.
Yeah.
Is pregnant, and what's going on emotionally? I know you said you weren't really ready for marriage.
Yeah.
You were young, 20. Is that about when she got pregnant?
2000. So
Okay.
99 actually. So yeah, we were only married a year and she got pregnant.
Okay.
And so we, being young, newly married, and now we're introducing a baby into it, probably wasn't also the smartest idea. But
okay.
we did. But
not that if you're newly married
exactly.
and you just found out that your wife's pregnant, that it's a train wreck, right? That's not what he said. For him,
for me, it was a bad idea.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Let's just preface that.
Yes.
Yeah.
But obviously, I was super excited.
Okay. All right. Yeah. That's what I wanted to get at. Yeah.
To have a little boy. We knew we actually had an ultrasound. We found out it was going to be a boy, And so yeah, super excited to be a dad. And
Okay.
the first time I laid eyes on him, I fell in love with him, and I was it was amazing. I never felt anything like it. It did help me mature a lot very quickly.
Yeah.
But it didn't fix our problems.
Yeah. Okay. It might have added to them, is what you were saying.
Yes.
Just,
Yeah.
which, not him, just the added pressure of having to take care of a newborn.
Yeah.
If you're getting good sleep and you're getting aggravated, you get less sleep. You're going to get more aggravated.
Yeah.
It just happens.
Yeah. And now you're responsible for another human being, food on the table,
Oh,
jobs.
the extra weight of that.
Extra. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All right, now fast forward and you find out that she's gone. I know you said you turned your back on God, but we'll focus in on what changed in you. How did you feel at the idea that not only was she gone, but your kids were gone, and your kids were under 10, right, at that point?
Oh yeah, they were. I'm gonna say about 2002. So they're probably 4 and 2.
Yeah, so they were tiny
toddlers.
Tiny.
Yeah, just young.
Okay.
Young, and they have already seen arguing, and it just not good.
But the idea that the 2-year-old, and you'll get into this a little bit more, I imagine, in your story, but the idea the 2-year-old now moved states away.
Right.
This is pre-FaceTime. This is pre-Skype.
Yeah.
Right, this is Stone Age material
I mean,
here.
barely cell phone.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah.
So you're looking at technology nowhere near like we have today, and they live like states away.
Yeah.
And you have a 2-year-old
18 hours away.
that in 6 months to a year won't remember what you look like.
Right.
So what's going on? Because you probably know this. You're processing this.
Yeah, I was kind of panicking, honestly, because obviously I love my kids. We lived by the beach. We'd go to the beach all the time. We had a great time. As far as the kids go, it was. I love my boys just like I love them now. But I think when that happened, I kind of went into panic mode. Also went into God, why did you let this happen? Blaming God. Basically just said, I'm not going to serve you. And I just totally went in the opposite direction. Totally went into the worldly lifestyle.
So do you think it would have been as a slap in the face or felt like God was slapping in the face as hard if it was just her? Like if you woke up one day, she had a note on her pillow, I'm gone, boys are in the room next door.
Yeah.
Do you think it would have been, I imagine probably was still going to be a shock.
Yeah.
But do you think it would have been as bad?
Obviously not.
Okay.
Okay,
yeah.
It was obvious that our marriage was heading into a divorce, probably. Okay. The fact that she just took them without even discussing it, and then 18 hours away, was pretty heavy for me.
Yeah.
Like, I was not making a lot of money. I knew, the costs involved in having them come or me go was not good.
Yeah.
So
let's pick up now. You met Aaron. There's a little bit of overlap, obviously, of the time there, but you and Aaron are together.
Yeah.
She's in Pennsylvania with the boys.
Yes.
What's coming up next? Well, Aaron has a son.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start there and then move forward with the story.
So I met Aaron at a very not a good place that neither of us should have been. We were both living in the world, and I just remember we were talking one time. Sitting at a bar talking, and she brought up, where did I go to school? I went to a private school my whole life, a Christian school, and I, told her that, and she goes, "Oh my gosh, I went to a Christian school too." And we started talking and comparing our lives together
at the bar.
Yeah. And her mom and dad were, her dad was a pastor, and her mom did music in church, and we kind of looked at each other and be like, what are we doing here,
Yeah.
But we still continued, so now we knew that we both had Christian families, but we were not living Christian lives like we were raised. So we moved in together, we were living together, and yes, she had her son Brian, who was 3 years old, and so Brian came into my life at 3 years old, and he's been in my life, ever since. But
yeah. So almost as a way of, and I don't know if you've ever thought about this, and I was just thinking about it as you were saying it, almost as if God was giving you an opportunity to be a dad when that opportunity was stripped away from you
I never thought of that, but you
you.
just gave me chills right now. Yeah.
So as a way of looking back at your story, seeing the faithfulness of the Lord. Anyway, so I was off script.
I mean, no, that's awesome. Because brother Brian, not knocking his dad, but at that time, a point in his life, he was not a good father.
Yeah.
And I can't say much about myself either. But I think that's really cool that you bring that up, because God did give me an opportunity to father a son that needed a father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so that's neat.
Anyway, so I apologize. So continue on now. Yeah. So then you guys made a trip you moved to Pennsylvania?
Because of some issues she was having, some threats and things like that, we were like, we got to get out of here.
Yeah.
And so
which is another story.
A whole other story, another podcast. Yeah. We were in the world, Michael.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
We were deep in the world.
I am very interested in hearing that.
So Brian's dad was not in his life. I mean, he was not there. So we decided, why don't we go to Pennsylvania? We'll get away from all this, move up to Pennsylvania. I can then have an opportunity to reconnect with my kids. We'll get an apartment and try to start fresh up there. So that's what we did. We moved up to Pennsylvania. We both got jobs. I worked at a paving company. Brian was with us. Again, he was 3 years old, and I began to work out some issues in the court so I could get custody of my kids on weekends or whatever, they would allow me. Mm-hmm. So that was our goal. Move to Pennsylvania. I'm going to see my kids. We're going to get away from this mess. Maybe we can turn our lives around and start over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did it go? You get there and...
I mean, us moving was, I think, a healthy decision, to get away from our old friends, the lifestyle we were living. We were under the care of my parents. They had an eye on us. So, we obviously wanted to honor them and respect them. And things were going well. I did get to have my kids every other weekend.
Okay.
And so I was seeing my kids every other weekend. What happened, which made things worse for me in my heart of bitterness, is every weekend that I had my kids, I would get a phone call either from a lawyer or something with accusations of me doing something to my kids or neglecting them, not being their dad. And so, I mean, we were constantly in the court battling things that were nonsense, things that never happened.
Yeah.
Which continued to make me angry. Like, it was so bad to the point where I was court ordered to go to a psychiatrist to see
what's going on
with me. And there was nothing. I would do what the court order told me, and they said there's nothing to be concerned about. And all of it was lies, to be quite honest, which angered me even more. And it cost me money. And so here I am, trying to make a living. Now I'm paying child support. I was paying about $800 to $900 a month. That's a lot of money, every month. Plus, I was paying spousal support because she would not sign the divorce papers because she knew she could get spousal support for 2 years. So there was a lot of things that just stirred emotions up in me, and I was like, is this ever going to get better?
Yeah.
And I was, just fighting some anger issues and bitterness and asking God questions like, why do you keep allowing this stuff? And it never stopped. It just continued on. And finally I said, I've had enough. I can't see the kids. I can only see my kids under supervision. Like, she's making this completely difficult. And so we made the decision to come back to Florida because her family's here.
Okay.
And then...
So, real quick, I'm going to pause because I know that something happened in there that I don't want to say it slipped your mind, but there's just a lot of stuff and we're rehashing stuff.
Yeah.
So there's another child that appeared somewhere.
Yes. That'd be Brody.
Yes. Okay. Which is you and Aaron's child.
Yes.
Brody.
Yes. So,
okay.
So he's a big moment there. So Aaron and we got married in 2007, actually in Brantford, Florida. We flew down here to get married because all her family was down here.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so we got married. Actually, she had a miscarriage on our wedding day. A lot of people don't know that.
Okay.
So there's a lot of things emotionally that, were going on.
Yeah.
I said we were changing our lives around, but we were still living together before we were married.
Yeah.
And so she had gotten pregnant, and then on our wedding day she had a miscarriage. So that was kind of tough to swallow too. But
Yeah.
about a year later, she got pregnant with Brody.
Okay.
Yeah, and we had Brody. We were still in Pennsylvania. He was born in Pennsylvania, and so we had Brody. And that was 2000. What would it be?
2008. Between 2008 2009.
Yeah,
married in 2007.
Yeah.
A year later. Just doing quick math.
Thank you.
So, all right. Now fast forward. So you move back. You make the decision because you're not seeing your children, and the times in which you're seeing your kids in Pennsylvania, it isn't even a healthy interaction between them.
Right.
You feel like you and Aaron feel like it's best for you to move down.
Yeah.
So you move down to Florida. You guys get jobs down here. You start doing life.
Yeah.
The best you can.
Yeah. Well, what happened was we actually, once we got married, we really quickly, and we found out she was pregnant again. We really quickly turned our lives back around, and it was probably a year and a half after we were married. We got a phone call from her aunt and uncle, who needed a music minister at their church.
Okay.
And so that was the real reason that brought us back down here, we were going to get away from the mess in Pennsylvania, because it was just a constant battle. Come down here, where her family was, with her son Brian. Obviously, they wanted to see their grandkids and cousins and all that stuff. But we moved down here to be part of a church here in Lake City.
So you guys turned your life back towards the Lord, and then just felt like maybe this was just God opening up a door to lead music at this church in Brantford.
Yeah.
So you're back down in Florida now.
Down in Florida.
You've got Brody, you've got Brian, and what's going on with the other two over the next couple of years?
Yeah. Well, before I left, about to come back, I did go to court and get things squared away for, summer times to have visitation. We had a phone call plan where I could call on Mondays and Wednesdays and talk to him. So we kind of had a court order of here's what the rules are, if he's going to be in another state.
Yeah, okay. Which is good. You got it laid out.
Got it laid out.
So you moved down, and how did it work?
It didn't work at all.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Obviously the phone calls were fine for, a little while, but then before you knew it, within a month or two, there was no answers. If I called a minute late,
it had to be at 7 o'clock.
It had to be at 7 o'clock. And if I was a minute early, minute late, it was just kind of a spike thing, I think. And, and it was just a battle, continued battle. Now I'm back here in Florida. I'm paying child support. I'm supposed to have them in the summers and every other holiday. There was just always this crack that would slip through, and things would just not ever work in my favor.
Okay.
And I just couldn't understand it for the life of me. I was still questioning God. There's still that rooted bitterness in my heart that I hadn't dealt with.
Yeah.
I'm doing better, but emotionally not so well, I would say.
And just a side note when it comes to Brody and Brian, do you feel like how that bitterness that you probably didn't even know was there, if you were honest with yourself, did it affect how you fathered those two? Do you maybe not entirely, but do you feel like that there was, because that was there, maybe anxiety was higher?
Yeah.
That when they would do things that would be, I call it like normal things kids do.
Right.
Depending on if it was 7:05 and you didn't get to talk to your kids, and they did it, opposed to like Thursday afternoon when they would have done it.
Right.
Do you feel like that bitterness changed how you maybe fathered them, parented them at times?
Yeah.
When it came to maybe discipline or guidance or something like that.
I feel like there was, it definitely affected me emotionally that way, just because I was angry. There were obviously situations that I probably didn't handle in the best way. I mean, I wouldn't say that I was a terrible dad, but I probably snapped a little harsh and spoke harshly more than I should have. And it showed in Brian and I's relationship. He was older, but Brody was still pretty young.
Yeah.
But, Brian, I think he felt that, and I think it kind of started a divide in our relationship some.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's good news at the end of the time.
Absolutely,
right? So
absolutely.
we'll get to it in a little bit, but
Yeah.
but just to recognize walking through this journey with you. So the bitterness started with her leaving Daytona, and we're going to get into God revealing that to you in a little bit that I'm interested in. But now even there, so it's not now that's beginning this divide between you and Brian. That maybe you weren't even unaware of at that moment.
Yeah.
Of the divide that was being formed.
Yeah.
Okay, so fast forwarding a little bit more. Struggling, she's not living up to her end of the bargain, and this isn't a bashing session.
Yeah.
This is just stating facts. She wasn't living up to your end of her end of the bargain, even though it was court ordered. So you're not seeing your kids at all. How long did it go?
Well, the real issue was she knew that I was not very financially set.
Yeah, so you're not bringing her back to court.
Yeah, I'm not able to go back to court. I already owed my lawyer like $24,000. I'd given her half of that. I'm actually avoiding my lawyer because I can't pay her. Just to be
not currently.
Not currently.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah. But I didn't know what to do. I was like, I can't go back to court.
Yeah.
So it's $3,000. They're not going to do nothing. I've been down this road.
Yeah.
It seemed like everything always went in her favor, and so I was like, what's the point? What's the point of getting more in debt? I can't pay what I'm paying now. It was just a constant battle. Now me being in Florida, I have to fly up here, or do like a mediation session. It never worked out. It never seemed to fall in my favor.
Okay.
Yeah. And so
you're because of that, and she knows that she almost got you, one arm tied behind your back kind of thing, or strong manning you out of seeing your kids. And so how long did it go? How long did you go without? And we're fast forwarding a little really quickly to
absolutely, yeah. But, well, like I said, the calls was getting less and less. Them answering, and then it just went silent. I called my lawyer. Said, well, you owe me yada yada yada. There's nothing really I can do. You have to pay this before I can help you again. And it was just like hitting a block wall. But yeah, so eventually the calls went quiet. I couldn't contact them. I couldn't get a hold of them, and months turned into years, and years turned into multiple years. I mean. It ended up being about 13 to 14 years with complete silence, no contact whatsoever with my kids.
And again, obviously, thankfully, technology is advancing in these 12 years.
Right.
But for the bulk of that, though, social media was very new at the beginning of that.
Yeah.
So it's very different than the world we live in now. It's just the reason why I say that is because there could be a guy my age now, or in his 20s or 24, which isn't my age anymore, but 24-year-old that's like, it's a big deal, man.
Yeah.
Just look them up on Facebook. They've probably got a TikTok.
Yeah.
And, which they shouldn't. But anyway. Sorry, for those of you guys that got TikTok. But anyway, that's another story. So, but yeah, that's not the case, though. Like, it legitimately, she could have gone silent with the kids.
Right.
And you would have no way of knowing.
Yeah, and they wouldn't have a Facebook because they were, I think at this point, 6 and 4 or 7 and 5, so they're not going to be on Facebook anyway. They barely know how to dial a phone too. So it's not like they could
contact you if they wanted to.
Yeah, even hit behind her back or anything like that. They just she just began to fill their heads with things about me that weren't true. She just a lot of horrible things that were said about me. Obviously, you go to a psychiatrist, you're accused of something, and so the next 13, 14, 15 years, their minds were being filled with, your dad don't care, he left us, and so forth.
Yeah.
You name it.
And in this time, you are growing in your faith with the Lord. You're raising your kids up in church.
Yes.
You and your wife are growing closer together as you're growing closer to the Lord. And in the back of your mind, and really in your heart and secret areas, there's this anger festering, this bitterness festering, maybe not just towards your ex-wife anymore, but towards God. So I remember you telling me a story where you get real with God. So just go into that real quick. We were in full-time ministry at this point in our lives, and I'm Pastor Chad. Got to have it all together, but I didn't. Yeah.
And I knew about praying, obviously. I believed in fasting. And so that's what I did. I prayed and fasted. Um, but I prayed and fasted most of the time with the wrong attitude and wrong heart. Mm-hmm. And like you said this story I was telling you about. I was sitting in church one Sunday. Can't really remember who was speaking that particular week, but I know it was about, the message was about promises from God and seeing things fulfilled. And the more I heard this message, the more angry I got. I was like, God, it's been 10 stinking years.
Yeah.
Okay. I've been fasting and praying, crying out to you. God, I've been, sowing extra seed. Everything the Bible tells you to do, I've been doing this. God, what's your problem? Why are you doing this to me?
Yeah.
I said, I thought your promises were yes and amen. And the Holy Spirit spoke to me right there in church. And we had a conversation. He said, Chad, my promises are yes and amen. He said, the problem is not with me. The problem is with you. He said, your attitude stinks. And we had a real conversation. And he said, if I give you your kids now, you'll blow it. And I said, and it just set me back.
Yeah.
I said, wow, he's right. And obviously, God's right.
Yeah, he tends to be right.
And he began to show me, in my mind, just areas of my life that were terrible, that stunk. My attitude, my, constant complaining, I'm the victim or all the time, or you know what I'm saying, different things like that. I was just bitter and angry, and I got ate up with it. And so I began to work on myself. I said, all right, well, these are some areas that I need to work on. So I tried to approach things in parenting differently, and parenting Brian and Brody. And, when I would feel, I guess, the old self rise up in me, I would say, okay, this is where I need to change. This is the things I got to do. And I just began to work on myself.
And in the process of working on yourself, God was found faithful.
Yes.
And some things started to shift a little bit with.
Yeah.
So let's just go right into.
So like I said, the 10, 12, 13 years had passed, my oldest son, Evan, is graduating. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm going to his graduation. I don't care if he doesn't see me. I'm going to his graduation because I want him to know one day. I'd always believed God was going to do what he said he was going to do. I was just like, what's the holdup, Yeah. And so,
but you don't want to get there, and then you look back and be like, I should have went to his graduation.
Right.
Am I not going to go to my son's
graduation? So I went to his graduation, and I'll never forget it. Whole family was packed up. We were heading to Pennsylvania, and we were probably, we had just gotten started, and we're driving, and my phone rings, and it says Westchester, Pennsylvania. And I'm like, what is going on? I mean, that's where my kids were living. I knew that. And I looked at Aaron, and I was like, I didn't answer it because it's just a number. And it actually was my son Zion calling my phone, left a message saying, Dad, I miss you. I really need to talk to you. And I was like, this is incredible. I'm literally on my way to Pennsylvania.
Yeah. And
my son calls me for the first time in 10 years. And so I call him back.
So you didn't call him back? No.
So I called him. I said, hey, this is your dad. And we talked, and he was so excited. And, he said, well, I said, what's going on, son? I mean, I haven't talked to him in years. I didn't really know what to do. It was awkward. It was emotional. And he said, well, I'm just having a hard time, and I really need to see you somehow. And I said, well, I'm actually on my way to Pennsylvania right now. And he was super excited, and I think he got excited and went and told his brother and told his mom, and it wasn't...
They did not share in the excitement.
Yeah, they didn't share in the excitement, and I actually got a phone call from my oldest son, who this is the first time that I heard his voice, in 13, 14 years, and it wasn't a pleasant conversation. Actually, it wasn't a conversation. It was him saying what he needed to say, and that was it. Excuse me. So... We were in South Carolina at that time, and I kind of pulled off, and I was like, Aaron, do we need to go to this thing? Mm-hmm. And something told me, he said, no, you need to go. So I was like, all right, we're going to go. We're going to go do this. It might not be pretty, but we're going to go. And so we went. We went to his graduation. Obviously, I was not offered a ticket to actually sit in the main assembly area. So I was in a classroom watching it on a screen, which is fine.
Yeah.
I got to see when they called his name. I got to see what my son looked like after 13 years. I was so happy that I went.
Yeah.
I didn't get to talk to him, but I got to see him. And as I was leaving, it was crowded. I didn't want him to be upset for his graduation, so I'm just gonna go. But as I was walking through the crowd, I saw my other son, Zion, and we locked eyes, and instantly he started crying, and I started crying, and we hugged. We talked for 5 minutes, and he said he really missed me, and he wanted to stay connected. He gave me his phone number, and and that was it. We left and went back to Florida, and I think somehow, so at this time he was a 9th or 10th grade, and I think he found out that I'd gotten his phone number, and his phone got disconnected. When I tried to call it, it was no longer a working phone.
Not he didn't find out. Your mom found out.
Yeah, I'm assuming that his mom found out.
Okay. Something happened.
Yeah.
But that number didn't work anymore.
That number didn't work anymore. It worked. I called him on the way back home. He answered, but then a week later, I tried to call again. The phone was disconnected. So that was the story of my life, and I kind of knew probably something like that was coming. So it went for another year and a half. 2 years where there was nothing. I didn't talk to him. So my last conversation with Evan was him not being so pleased with me, and then my last conversation with Zion was 5 minutes and a hug, and that was it. So we went 2 more years. We came back down here again. I'm like, God, you know what?
Yeah.
That was like a teaser, know. And so I knew that my son Zion was 2 years behind Evan. So I was like, graduation time comes again.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm rolling his graduation.
Yeah. We're rolling back.
I'm rolling back to Pennsylvania. I'm gonna do it. I just felt like I did not want them to know that Dad wasn't there for the graduation.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, so I had planned to do that, and I guess Zion maybe assumed that I was going to come, and so he actually reached out to me, and we actually started talking through text for a while before I came. So he knew I was coming. We kind of had it planned where he could sneak away, and we had dinner together and hung out a little bit. And so we hung out and had dinner that weekend of his graduation. And then, again, we came back to Florida, and he was in Pennsylvania. And it was probably about 2 or 3 months later, he called me and said, Dad, I want to move to Florida. He said, what's the chances that I would have a place to stay if I came down there? And obviously,
you're like 110%.
Yeah, 110%.
That's the likelihood.
Yeah. So, and I was pretty excited. I was like, all right, God, it's about time. You're finally doing something here. And so, God did a miracle and brought my son Zion down here. Mm-hmm. And that's really when things began to shift in a miraculous way. He came down here. Actually, he was staying in this room. This was his room, and he came down here, and we just began to develop our relationship. He was raised in a completely opposite way than what I was raised. I'm very conservative, biblical values. He was raised in a way that was not. So I knew that I had to be very gentle in some of our conversations.
Yeah.
And listen, not listen to reply, but just listen as a dad would, and offer advice if he asked. So he was 19, about to be 20. So, I could offer advice, but he's he's of legal age. He can kind of make his own decisions on, life and whatnot. And so he lived down here, and he lived here for about 7-8 months. And, he was saving up. He wanted to get his own apartment, which was great. He moved to Gainesville. Still, we obviously stayed in connection. We saw each other as often as we could. And he started getting involved in music, and he asked me to build him a studio desk. And I said, I would love to build you a studio desk. And so I built him this desk. Oh, let me back up.
I was about to say, you missed another.
Yeah, whole nother. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
So at this time, Evan, my oldest son, I had found out he was living in California on Yosemite Park. And he worked for Yosemite Park. During this time, when all the fires were happening and the park shut down, he was living in a garage because he was living at the park now. He had no place to go. So a friend just let him move in his garage, and it was terrible for him. And he said, I got to get out of here. So he called his brother, Zion, in Gainesville and said, I'm thinking about coming. I got to get out of here. And Zion said, why don't you move in here? So that's what he did. So I believe God moved Evan from California.
God caused the fires in California.
Yes. The wind blew the right way.
Just so
smoked him out of the garage, and he moved to Florida.
Yeah. Obviously, we don't. But God used that as an opportunity.
Absolutely.
Probably.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So now they're both in Gainesville.
Evan was here. Still didn't want to have anything to do with me, but I knew that Zion saw the dad.
The potential there, what was in there.
Right. And also the one opposite of what he's been told his whole life.
Mm-hmm.
He found out a lot of things that that he was misled on, things like that. And so I think he began to see the relationship I had with Brody and how I responded here as a husband and dad, and, here. And I think he learned quickly that there were some things that were off.
Okay.
So I think him coming here first kind of set the tone for when Evan moved in with him. Said, hey, there's some things that weren't quite right that we were told, and I believe it softened Evan's heart. Well, back to the desk. I told Zion. I said, hey, your desk is ready. You want me to bring it out to you? He said, yeah. And I said, if Evan's home, I said, I'll tell you what, we'll just unload it at your front door, and then when I leave, you guys can carry it in. I said, I was trying to give him his space, respect him.
Sure.
And Zion just out of the blue said, well, actually, Evan and I were just talking, and he said he wants to talk to you. So it was like out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect it. I was just trying to be patient, and God opened the door, and it was amazing. I went there, delivered the desk, walked in, hugged my son Evan for the first time in 15 years.
And you just started to talk to him and just saw the faithfulness of
one of his conditions was he didn't want to talk about anything about his mom or the past. And I'm like, I'm totally fine with that. All I want is a relationship with you.
Yeah.
And so I just left it at that. There's been small conversations of him asking questions, but I'm just, whenever he's ready to discuss that, we'll discuss that. But so I went and saw Evan and I invited him to stay the weekend here at the house. I was like, why not? And they both surprisingly, Evan said, yeah, sure, I'll come. And so he stayed here the night, and I think we had planned for 2 nights, and we were talking, having fun, and it was amazing. And then I was at work, and he's asked Aaron, he said, do you think Dad would mind if I stayed 2 more nights? And so that was encouraging to me. And so here we are, Evan's been back in my life, and Zion's in my life, but Evan's been back in my life for about 4 months now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And we've actually got a picture of him with all of his boys for the first time. I think it was Easter.
Yes.
That we're going to show right now, just so you can just see it.
Yes. So this picture was the first time we were together, all the boys, with me, Aaron, Brian, Brody, all of us together for the first time in 15 years. So it was a special Easter.
Oh yeah, and this was this past Easter. So it's
this past Easter.
This is current events in the life of Chad Rodgers.
Yep.
So God restored all of this,
mm-hmm.
and you learned, from what I'm hearing, the valuable lesson of God works things out in His timing, and if we try to force things, He in His grace and mercy, sometimes He allows us to force things that make things worse. And in his wisdom and knowledge can work all things out for the good of those who love Him.
Right.
But for those that are listening to His voice, slowing down, not trying to force things,
mm-hmm.
and just trusting the process that God is working in the background, even when it seems like He's not working.
Yeah.
It's kind of almost a theme song of your life.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. So God's restored those two. Let's back up to something that I mentioned earlier, where God had brought Brian into your life as an opportunity for you to be a dad when fatherhood seemed to have been ripped from you. And so, but Brody's introduced. You got this bitterness, stewing and festering, and then there's this divide between you and Brian.
Yeah.
And that grows as he enters into teenage years.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's a restoration story there as another element of God's faithfulness. But
Yeah.
so that's why I want to kind of talk about that as we end it out.
I mean, you know, growing up, me and Brian were pretty tight. I mean, he liked me, but looking back, there were probably some things that I was harsh on because of my emotional chaos, I guess. But yeah, as he began to grow older, he started getting involved with friends I didn't know about.
Yeah.
Because he knew that I would like those friends, and he would be going to spend the nights, and then I'm finding out that he's doing things he shouldn't be, and they're sneaking out of their house that they're spending the night at, and things like that. And so I wasn't going to have it. You know, that was just my attitude. Or we're going to stop this. You know, the strong dad comes in there and sets the tone. Well, that didn't work.
Yeah.
You know, and the more that it didn't work, the harder I tried to make it work. And he got older, and 15, 16, 17, and you know, he's just. I mean, he was rebellious, obviously, you know, but the way I handled it could have been better, and I think it would have helped probably if I would have handled myself better. But anyway, he got involved with friends, and that just really caused a divide between us, a strong wedge, and he really didn't. He loved me, but there was just a lack of respect on both parties. It wasn't just his fault, my fault too.
Yeah.
And so he moved out, got his own place, was living the life that I once lived, you know. But, you know, I'm still, you know, pointing my finger.
Yeah.
And I was doing the same thing he was. So he knew that I did that. And so he's thinking, well, what are you talking about, Mr. Christian man? You know, you did the same thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, yeah, but don't do it, you know. But anyway, so he moved out, and just things progressively got worse. He was involved in an accident. There was no DUI or under the influence involved in that accident. It was an accident. But this really was a difficult time for us and our family. He was actually yielding in through traffic, or didn't yield, and a motorcycle hit him, and the guy passed away. So that was a very difficult time. We weren't sure what was going to happen with him legally. Was there going to be jail time? So that stirred up more emotion, you know. And again, this was before Evan and Zion were in our lives, so it's just like constant chaos, you know.
Yeah.
It's just like nothing is working out. There's always a problem with our kids. God, why?
Yeah.
You know. And so we're going through that whole process. You know, legal things take some time. It was a 2-year process. Turns out he just had his license suspended, so which was good. But it wasn't long after that he got in trouble for dealing some drugs on
social media.
Yeah, and it happened to be an undercover cop that he sold to. So this was kind of bigger as far as legality goes, because this was no accident.
Yeah.
You know, and so that happened actually. And let me go back here. He had actually moved to South Carolina. He realized, I'm getting in so much trouble here. I got to get away from my friends. So he moved to South Carolina. That's where his dad was at the time. They had kind of worked on their relationship a little bit, so they were speaking. And he was up there. And I missed him. You know, I missed him. And he started doing a lot better up there. And when he would come down, I could just tell that there's something different in our relationship.
Mm-hmm. And at the same time, you've already had that conversation with God, so you are currently working on yourself as he's in another state working on himself.
Yeah, okay, God just like, Chad, just
stop being that.
Yeah, just love him.
Yeah.
Just love him.
Yeah.
You know, if he asks for your opinion, give it. Because now, obviously, at this age, he's 19, 20 years old on his own. He's has his own apartment, living in South Carolina. I can't really tell him.
Yeah.
And I just began to show love. If he would do something that I didn't agree with, I would just keep my mouth shut. And sometimes he would ask me, Dad, what do you think about this? And I would say, well, you know, I wasn't going to say nothing, but since you asked, and it opened the door. And just simple things that I did in my attitude adjustment really changed our relationship. I mean, little things were so impactful. Just being quiet, you know, you don't kind of speak up about everything. And so we, you know, time went on, and he would text me here and there, and it was things that would never happen. I would text him just to, I was just constantly trying to let him know that I loved him, because there was a season where he didn't feel like I loved him, though I did, just based on my attitude towards him.
Yeah.
He probably felt that. And so we really began to work on our relationship, and today our relationship is better than it's ever been. Brian and I mean, he calls me out of the blue, just say hey, and it's incredible what God has done.
Well, and you had mentioned Father's Day. He texted you out of the blue. Father's Day, just told you Happy Father's Day. Just simple things, just so those watching. I mean, it's not like he's profound things. He's not like coming over, giving bear hugs and stuff like that. It's little things that are.
He's not mowing my lawn or nothing.
Yeah. But even that small stuff would 4 or 5 years ago would have been, or 2 years ago, it might even have been out of the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, a 180 turn in our relationship. Like, what was that 180? We go all the way around. So, whatever it was.
360 we go all the way around.
Oh, yes, thank you.
It's okay.
Me and my...
You just play guitar.
Yeah, I just play guitar.
So we had the picture before. So I just the reason why I wanted to bring Brian into this is because we run the risk of missing that. So there's this God gives you this opportunity to be a dad in the midst of fatherhood being stolen from you because of not dealing with bitterness with your ex-wife and that stuff. It almost is like the enemy snuck in.
It was like a disease. It was like a cancer. Yeah,
and it caused a division between the I don't want to say the new son, but the son that God blessed you to be able to actually raise.
Yeah.
And so then now, looking back, hindsight, seeing that as God's dealing with, telling you to deal with your issues so you can get your sons back in your life.
Yeah.
You yielding to that is restoring this son and father relationship that you shouldn't have had to begin with. It was a blessing from God to begin with. You screwed it up like we all screw up blessings of God in His foreknowledge and His ability to work all things out for those who love Him. You start to respond how you should respond to the Lord in that moment, and God begins to knit this relationship that should have never have been to begin with back together as He's restoring the relationship that should have been there from the beginning.
Right.
And now you've got this past Easter Sunday, beautiful picture you just seen. We've got this huge redemption story on your half. Redemption from you, like being redeemed back to the Lord. And then restoration of your boys together. It's beautiful. I don't know. I don't know how I might be reading way into this, but it was
the whole day was amazing. Just to see the hand of God and how He worked all this out.
Yeah.
I mean, it was incredible. It was an incredible moment.
You guys are blessed beyond measure.
Yeah. With
kids that you are being able to get back in your life for the first time in years. Mm-hmm. Some of them and others just better now than ever before with Brian. Better relationship now than ever before. And Brody gets to grow up seeing this as So I kind of want to end with this. What encourages me in all this is you've got this other son that's growing up, seeing in real time the faithfulness of the Lord that are memory pegs of God's goodness. Yes. So as he grows up and he discovers God on his own in God's timing, and he wrestles with what the faith is, he sees the faithfulness of the Lord being brought.
I'm glad you brought that up because
in 3D.
We always had a list of what we were fasting for, and we had at the top of the list things that we really, and so Brody saw all this, all these years growing up in church, him growing up in church, and seeing Aaron and I just at the altars praying and believing and fasting, every year for breakthrough in these areas. And when it all happened, it was really cool to see, knowing what he has seen us go through in all the difficult times. That God is faithful. Yeah. In all circumstances.
And bringing things together.
Yeah.
So, so is there anything else you want to add to the story before we kind of end this thing out?
Man, we're just learning each other still. It's still all new, and we're doing things together. Things that we missed out on. went down the river for the first time myself. I've been here in Florida for 13 years, and we all went down the river together, all of us boys, and we just had a great time laughing, and it's just really cool. I'm thinking because I'm so muscular, my float was always back, so I could see everything ahead of me. But no, it was just really cool to see all my kids laughing, and I'm going down the river. It's beautiful out. I'm just thinking, man, God,
how good is God?
How good is God?
That's awesome.
Yeah. I wanted to say that there was a shift in my life when I was listening to a sermon, and the pastor was talking and saying, God is always working in our circumstances, and even though He's not moving in a particular situation, He's not moving on purpose, and so therefore, because He's not moving on purpose, He's doing something. And that really, I don't know, it changed my perspective. Like, God's waiting on purpose, because if He rushes something, or if I rush something, I could miss something. And so He knew exactly what was needed at the exact right time. And when it all came together, it was all God.
Yeah.
And so I'm just so thankful that, that God did it how He did it.
Yeah.
Because it changed me. It changed my relationship with me and Brian. So many good things came out of the wait.
That's
the
awesome.
waiting. Yeah.
So maybe we end with that. Maybe speak to the camera. You're looking at a dad who is struggling maybe in all the areas you were struggling with, or maybe just a few of them. What would you say as kind of like a final goodbye, or final last couple last words, and then where can they find you at?
Okay, sure.
Go ahead.
I would say that submit yourself to the Lord, and listen to His voice. Listen to what He's speaking to you. I know I had a lot of issues that I had to deal with, and God knew what they were, and God had to work those issues out of me. And so when things really began to shift is when I submitted myself to the Lord, and I said, God, all right, show me what you need. And ask God, say, God, show me the areas of my life that I need changed. And He will, I promise, He will show you the areas in your life that you need changing. And let God handle the mess, because it's too much for us to handle. And when we trust God and let His hands in that and let Him work, it all comes out for the good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So where can they find you at?
So I think you did mention, my wife and I are actually planning a church here in Lake City, Florida. Our church is called Wellspring Church. You can find that on our website is wellspringchurch.online. We have a Facebook and Instagram, Wellspring Church LC for Lake City. You can find us on social media. My name is Chad K. Rodgers on both Instagram and Facebook. You can find us there. Okay. And you can follow our lives, follow our pictures, see what's happening.
That's awesome.
With my boys and our family and all that good stuff.
So Pastor Chad Rodgers, Wellsprings Church, thank you so much for just for allowing me to come into your home and sit down with you and find out your story. My name is Michael Childs. Thank you guys again for watching this episode of the Father Interviews, part of the Just Another Father YouTube channel. Please like, share this video along with any of the other stuff that's on our social medias through Facebook and Instagram. And please check out the website justanotherfather.com and interact through this video by leaving comments that we can look back on and interact with in upcoming videos. Thank you again so much. Have a great day.